We are so excited. This team is actually doing 2 huge environmental projects. And as this team, they're calling themselves the Wind Wolves. And after I introduce it, I'm going to leave it all up to them. They've got some great questions to ask you. So when I told them what I knew about you and how I met you, we decided that you'd be an absolutely wonderful expert for them to learn from. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to let the students introduce themselves with their first names, and then the first person to speak will be Kendra. So ladies and gentlemen, you're going to shout your name because we're on a conference call, okay? So you're going to shout your name out saying hi to Mr. Begley, and we'll start with Yuko. Really loud. Hi, Mr. Begley, I'm Yuko.
Hi, Mr. Begley, I'm Yuko.
Hi, Mr. Begley, I'm Sienna.
Hi, Mr. Begley, I'm Tanya. Hi, Mr. Begley, I'm Jessica.
Hi, Mr. Begley, I'm Janelle.
Hi, Mr. Begley, I'm Kendra.
And, excuse me, Mr. Begley, Emmanuel is on his way. He was getting his lunch. So I'm now turning it over to Kendra.
Thank you, Mr. Begley, for allowing us.
Very polite, but you can feel free to call me Ed.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Mr. Begley says you can call him Ed. Emmanuel just arrived. Emmanuel, say hi to Mr. Begley. Say hi to Ed.
Hi, Mr. Ed.
Tell him your name really loud because he can't hear you.
My name is Emmanuel Ruiz.
And tell him hi.
Hi.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. And now I'm going to give you Kendra.
Thank you, Mr. Ed Begley, for allowing us to talk with you today. We are the WMS Wind Wolves, and we are hoping to teach our community about renewable energy so we can clean up our environment and our air. We love trees and know that the air needs to be clean to help the trees do their work better. Our first question is, what does the world do when we all run out of non-renewable resources such as uranium or coal?
Well, what we need to do now is, before we totally run out, we need to start moving in another direction towards more renewables, which have gotten very cost effective. The more wind turbines we can put up, the more solar panels we can put up, the more we can make our homes and offices more energy efficient. We'll need that much less coal and natural gas and nuclear to get the power from. It won't happen overnight, but you have to start dialing things in a different direction, and that direction is towards renewables. And they become very economically viable, so now's the time to really pick up the pace and do more and more.
Thank you.
Why did you decide to become an environmentalist?
I became an environmentalist back in 1970 with the first Earth Day. My gosh, that's 47 years ago now, but I was so fed up with the smog back in the 50s and 60s. Believe it or not, this, what I'm about to say is going to be hard for you to all believe, but the air was even smoggier back in the 50s and 60s. It was really, really bad. Maybe some of the folks might remember it, grandparents might remember it, how bad it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then we began to make it better. A little bit in the 80s, the 90s some more, and finally, near the end of the 90s, we started to make some pretty strides. And now the air, even though there's 4 times the cars, millions more people in the LA area, we have much less smog. So we've had a success story. So I got involved because I was fed up with the smog, and me and many other people have helped make it better.
Oh, okay. Have you ever been criticized for your decision to change, to become eco-friendly?
Yeah, there's some people that, have interest in the old ways, and there's some companies and executives that certainly have a big financial interest, but the difficult thing is when you have a lot of workers, you don't want to leave them out of the conversation. You don't want to leave them out in the cold, and have the workers who are now unemployed at coal mines, at oil rigs, or refineries. You want to have jobs for them and things transition away from these, dirtier fuels, the non-renewable fuels. So you want to always have retraining programs in ways that people aren't hung out to dry. So that's very important. When people are critical of making changes, they're, in favor of the status quo. for a number of reasons, and not all the reasons are bad. Some people only know one thing. They've been a coal miner their whole life. Their parents were coal miners, and their grandparents were coal miners, so they think that's all they can do. And there needs to be training programs so people have access to different ways of making a living.
How did your change affect your daily life with your wife or children?
It was, you know, it was kind of difficult there when I made the big transition back at the end of the 80s. I had always been an environmentalist, and I drove an electric car as far back as 1970, but there weren't much back then in 1970. Electric cars were not much. So I started driving a fuel-efficient car, but a regular car. I did that until 1989 after the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And I went, I'm just going to stop driving. I'm going to, you know, get around by bicycle and public transportation. And then I bought an electric car late 89 or early 1990. So my kids had thought I had lost my mind because they lived some distance away. And so people were concerned about cleaning up the environment back then, but not so much so they were willing to drive an electric car back in the late 80s or early 90s. And I did that, so a lot of friends and family thought I was pretty kooky, but it all worked out, and now everybody's on board in my family, and many people that I know, people I've never met, are also on board. They can see the writing on the wall with climate change and air pollution and the financial problems being dependent on foreign oil. So people want to move to renewables for a number of reasons now.
How do you mostly use these two energy sources, solar and wind?
I'm sorry, say that again?
How do you mostly use these two energy sources, solar and wind?
In the old days, we used to have batteries at my home. I had solar panels at my home, and I had a big bank of batteries because you wanted power when it was cloudy, you wanted power at night, and if you didn't have batteries, you wouldn't have power. Now, I don't have any batteries. I just use the DWP grid. You can use the Southern California Edison grid as your battery, if you will. You just kind of spin the meter backwards during the day and spin it forwards at night, and you get a bill for the net. It's called net metering. So I'm very soon going to get a small battery pack for emergencies if the DWP power goes out. But what I had for years was batteries to store the solar. I had a wind turbine at home too for a while, but it didn't put out much power. The wind turbine I had since 1985 that I had over 30 years, that was part of a wind farm, and that one was quite reliable and put a lot of power into the grid for over 3 decades. So wind and solar have worked for me since the 80s, since the mid-80s, and it worked as an investment. It worked as a way to reduce my energy bills and to save me money in the long term.
So Janelle has the next question, number 6. Number 6.
How can other people use these energy sources to lower their home costs as you have done?
What I recommend that people do when people contact me to get solar in their house, I say, here's the person I want you to call. You know, my friend Ron and Tammy Schwalski, call them, they'll do an energy audit. My friends usually say, I didn't ask you for an energy audit, I want to put up solar. I said, before I allow you to even get a bid on solar, before we even consider that as a possibility, you need to make your house more energy efficient first. You need to change the lighting in your house, LED lighting, let's say. Put a lot of dimmers around to make it more energy efficient, the different lighting instruments you do have. You need to get an energy efficient form of insulation into your walls. You need to put up some weather stripping, energy saving thermostat. Do all that cheap and easy stuff first, and if you have the resources, do some more like double pane windows or an energy efficient heating and air system. Once you do that, now you get a bid for a solar array on your rooftop. It might not be as big as you might have thought before that energy audit and taking those actions that the audit suggests. You know, because the energy company is going to look at your bill. The solar company, I should say, solar energy company will look at your bills and say, you need to have 6 kilowatts up on your roof. Well, if you do the home energy audit, make your house more efficient, you might only need 3 or 4. So the first thing you want to do before you consider solar is to make your home or office more energy efficient. And then you can entertain buying or leasing your solar panels after that. That's what I recommend.
Thank you. My next question is, how can wind and solar power create or make someone's life easier?
It makes life, I think solar and wind make life easier because all these environmental challenges come down to health problems. There's health problems with dirty air. There's health problems with dirty water. You know, these are real problems that the American Lung Association will tell you about. Emphysema, asthma, you know, all these problems from, you know, breathing, dirty air, the toxins in the water from dirtier forms of energy. So if you get away from the, you know, the oil and coal production of electricity and for modes of transportation like automobiles and trucks, you're going to make it a less toxic world. So that's what I recommend that people do. People get a benefit from it in a health sense by making for less air pollution. So that's, I always try and pitch the choices we're going to make as health choices to improve your health, and people respond to that. People are very interested in protecting the health of themselves and their children.
Tanya has the next question, and she's really wanting you to go into a little more detail about
How has your solar-powered home and other eco-friendly projects helped or inspired others?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I've wanted solar my whole life, but I couldn't afford it back in 1970 when I started. So finally in 85, I could afford solar hot water. I put that up. And other people, even back then in the 80s, went, I hear you put up solar hot water in your house. How does it work? And I would tell them, and other people, you know, leading by example in that way, other people became interested in it. And then I started to, in 1990, I put up solar electric on my house, and people were still not really on board much in the early 90s, a few early adopters, but it was when I finally had this show called Living with Ed. It was a reality show that was on HGTV, on Home and Garden television. People then started to really respond and email me or come up to me on the street or write me a letter, mail me a letter, and ask about the solar and ask if they could do it. So it just took a while for people to really get on board and think that it was something real that they could actually do. It just, and the other thing that helped a lot was that the cost of solar went down so much lower than it had been. Solar became more financially attractive to buy it. And more importantly, and I saved the best for last, a lot of people became very interested in solar when all these companies like Solar City and Varango and Sungevity started doing what they call solar leasing programs. You don't have to buy your solar panels like I did for $30,000, $40,000 or something like that. You would just lease the solar array from a company that would own the panels, and they would bill you for that. It would cost you $120 a month for the solar lease, but you'd save $180 a month on your electric bill. You go, this is a great deal. I'm putting $60 in my pocket every month, and I didn't spend any money like that crazy Begley. He spent a fortune. So it was solar leases that really got a lot of people interested.
That's
a lot
amazing.
Of people have done that.
That's amazing. Wow. Janelle has the next question. What ways do you find?
What ways do you find most successful in promoting overall your ideas on eco-friendly lifestyles?
The thing that I found to have the most success is to actually do this stuff yourself rather than just theorize it. Do a public service announcement. Hey, we should carpool. Or public transportation is great. Everybody get out there and ride the bus. Bike riding is good for your fitness and also good to the environment. It's one thing to talk about those things, and there's nothing wrong with that. I like to do that too. But if you're actually doing it, people really respond to that, to somebody that's actually doing something. And the other thing that I found very effective was not to get louder, if you will, about these problems, even though the problem is becoming more severe with climate change and other challenges that we face. I got quiet in a way. By that I mean I would show up whenever anybody called upon me. Would you come to a press conference and say a few words? Would you? But I would show up and just kind of wait there till somebody asked me a question. But I wouldn't be loud, if you will, in any way about it. I would just show up at the Hollywood fundraiser, let's say, or different events on my bike and not say anything about it because it wasn't really an environmental event. And that wound up being more powerful than being loud about it. Because people would come up and say, what are you doing? Why are you riding a bike to this film opening? Are you crazy? I said, no, it's just the way I like to get around. It's good for fitness. You know, the world is my gym. I ride around and I've got to change the clothes. I got to go in the bathroom here and change and go into the event like anybody else, but I rode my bike here. And that wound up being very powerful because I wasn't looking for press for it. I wasn't saying, get all the cameras over here. Take the pictures. I got an announcement today. If you just do it, it's very, very powerful in that way. So to do things rather than talk about them is powerful, and to do them, to conduct much of your activity in silence was helpful. I'm not suggesting we should all just shut up and not say anything ever, but there's a time to talk about it and there's time to just do things without talking about them. And people really notice. They have a great deal of respect for your point of view if you're not shouting at them.
Because you're leading by example. Oh, Mr. Ed, you are amazing. Jessica has a question about the organizations that you have helped and worked with.
What are some of the environmental organizations you have helped, and how did you choose them?
Well, one was very dear to me in the LA area. It's a statewide organization, but it was based in LA for years and still is mostly in LA. It's called the Coalition for Clean Air. And we work with the American Lung Association and others to try to get regulations passed at the HUMD and elsewhere to clean up the air in LA. And so we had some help from Washington with something called the Clean Air Act, but that organization was and is very dear to me because they had great results in getting to state, local, and federal officials and getting them to do something about the dirty air in LA and actually make it cleaner. So the Coalition for Clean Air is one. Another great organization, also local, I like to start with the local organizations, is a place called Heal the Bay. Heal the Bay is a great group started by Dorothy Green and others, and the notion was to clean up the Santa Monica Bay. And they've had great success in that, so I work with them. Then nationally, I work with the NRDC. That's the National Resources Defense Council. Natural Resources Defense Council, sorry. Not being very clear today. Natural Resources Defense Council, NRDC. Great organization. Another great local group I work with is called Tree People. They're urban foresters. They get people planting trees. You've probably heard of Tree People, haven't you?
They were working with Amigos de los Rios, and they, you know, the emerald necklace. The Whittier Narrows is the largest jewel in the emerald necklace, which is the thoroughfares for the greenbelts and such. And this team that is so passionate about trees and the environment that we're so lucky that you are speaking with, they went and learned how to plant trees properly, and there were 100 trees that had to be planted that day, and this team with their family, Mr. Ed, planted over 20.
That's fantastic. That's just fantastic.
And they want to go back, so they're getting to go back later on in the spring to find out how much the trees have grown.
Yeah, I want to hear about that too. Report back to me on how that worked out. That sounds great.
We will. Kendra has the final question, and then we have a huge favor for you to consider.
Sure.
In your opinion, how well does more solar and wind power help stop global warming?
It helps a great deal. You know, it's one of the best things we can do in the developing countries because they don't have big power plants built already that run on coal or natural gas or nuclear plants. They have no power in many parts of the world. So you can leapfrog over the old way of doing things, which is building a central power plant that burns, coal or natural gas that runs on nuclear, and then running all these transmission lines down to the substations, and those lines further go down to the neighborhoods, and they further go down to the actual houses and businesses. That's one way of doing things. It's like the old paradigm of telephones. You have phone lines coming from telephone poles going all across the nation, across the city, and across your neighborhood. You don't need to do that now. They have something called cell phones for a few years now, so you don't have to run phone lines to have a phone conversation. It's the same with solar. If people want power on their hut in their village, they don't have to go to a big city like Nairobi or some other city, Entebbe, and have the power plant there, and then run all the subsequent lines down and down and down so it finally gets to their village. They can just put solar panels on their roof and have a small battery that they can buy reasonably, and they can have power on their hut in their village. So that's what we're urging people to do, to leapfrog over the old way of doing things, which is centralized power, and to have power right where they need it, on their domicile.
That's amazing. Okay, Kendra's going to ask you the big question.
We're researching if our school can have wind and solar energy added to our school buildings to help save the environment. Would you be willing to write us a letter of support stating you support our idea to get wind and solar energy to our school? It would help us to have the support from you, since you are an expert in this area who lives what he speaks.
Happily, I will happily write that.
Awesome! Yay! He's going to write a letter. All right. Oh, Mr. You have. We videoed you. You look like a telephone. We videoed you at the telephone conference, and three of the Wind Wolves, that's what they call themselves, three of the Wind Wolves have been taking notes, and we have it videoed so we can go back. And they already know they're going to be looking into the Coalition for Clean Air and get more information on that. And they're going to look into Heal the Bay and the American Lung Association, the AQMD, the National Resource Defense Council, and definitely talk about more about with the tree people. And they're going to give you updates on their tree work as well. And if it's okay with you, I will send you the contact information to send the letter to me for the Wind Wolves. Oh my gosh, they're hoping. We've already talked to the mayor, and she said that anything that's done on a school building is totally out of the hand of the city, so we just have to have the school district and the state support it. And we've been told that if you, no matter who you are, if you want to put solar on, you can, because the state is so supportive of solar. We also are doing, the team is doing their homework. They're going to speak to a raptor specialist this Friday to see if our area is safe for a wind turbine. And then they had some other ideas of maybe how to make a wind turbine, a small residential one, more safe for the birds.
That's great. That's exciting.
We are so excited. Boys and girls, what else do you want to say to Mr. Ed? He lets us call him Mr. Ed.
Thank you for your time today, and we will keep you posted on our efforts, definitely.
And Janelle, what do you have to say?
Thank you so much, and we hope that you can write the letter.
And what's the biggest thing? Each one of you tell me what's one thing that you just learned that you didn't know about.
I learned about
This is Sienna.
how like the small towns or like villages, they don't have to go to like big cities and stuff to get their power, and they have it right where they need it.
And talk loudly over to the phone. Say it one more time, really loud. Stand up and kind of lean towards the phone.
Okay. That like little villages or towns, they don't have they don't have to go to like big cities to get their power, and they can have it right where they need it and right where their home is.
Yuko.
I learned that the actual global warming, like the prevention of it, started a lot earlier than I expected.
Wow, that's a good point. Manuel.
I learned about the Clean Air Act in LA. I didn't notice that there was so much pollution in LA and just in...
So you were shocked about the 1950s and 60s having so much pollution?
Yeah.
Yeah, and did you remember what he said about there's so many more people now and our air is still cleaner than it was back then?
Yeah.
I learned how thanks to solar panels, you pay $120 instead per month, And oh wait, no, you pay 120 per month, but you save 180 from your bill.
That's fantastic.
I would agree with Manuel. The most surprising thing that I learned today was that how foggy the air was and how smoggy it was before there were so many people.
It's a shock, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a shock.
That shock even got me, and I agree with Jessica and Emmanuel, the fact that we have more population and probably more machines working, and yet we don't have enough, we don't have as much smog as we did before.
I agree with Tiana with the villages, because we can start helping villages rather than taking the same path that we took years ago and just impacting them as often as possible.
So I have to tell you, you have been a big hit. You're amazing. I've always talked about you to everybody. You know and I have never stopped using what I learned from the NEED project back in 2004 when I got that grant. I still use the materials and the equipment because I so strongly believe that our future is our students, and they're the ones that are going to keep us going.
I agree. I totally agree.
I can't thank you much. Everybody, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Mr. Ed. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Mr. Ed. And
Thank you all.
thank you so much. And you were so generous with your time. I will send you an email before school is out today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gang. I look forward to talking to you again.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.